The invite for the meeting had popped up on my digital calendar at 9:15 on a Tuesday morning. It was simply titled Third Quarter Performance and Operations Architecture Review. In global freight logistics, vague meeting titles usually signaled one of two major turning points. You were either getting quietly phased out or receiving the executive promotion you had bled 15 long years to earn. Considering I was the sole specialist in headquarters who understood how to manually reconfigure our routing node server during a grid blackout, I assumed it was the latter. I was dead wrong. At 2 o'clock sharp, I walked into Vice President Bradley Prescott's glass office. The room smelled of expensive cologne and stale espresso. Bradley sat behind a glass desk that likely cost more than my first two automobiles combined. He kept scrolling on his smartphone, purposefully forcing me to stand near the door for 30 seconds. A classic corporate power move I had watched him execute on junior vendors for years. "Sit down, Julian," Bradley said finally. Sliding his device face down onto the polished surface, I sat down quietly. I was 54 years old, wearing a navy suit that was functional rather than fashionable. I held a leather notepad on my knee, prepared to discuss my transition into the Director of Systems Architecture role. "We have reviewed your department metrics for the past fiscal year," Bradley began, leaning back in his leather chair. "Your team throughput is undeniable. A 99.4% on-time delivery rate across the Midwest freight corridor is exceptional work." "Julian, thank you, Bradley," I replied calmly. "I spent the last 14 months refining the automated node waiting script. The operational flow is running smoother than ever before." "Right, the scripts," Bradley said, waving a hand dismissively as if I had described swapping out a burnt light bulb. "That is precisely the core issue, Julian. You are a technician, a mechanic of the process. We value technical precision, but the director position requires grand vision. It requires transformative executive leadership." My stomach tightened into a knot. I recognize those corporate buzzwords used to deflect genuine merit. "I have managed the core logistics team for 8 years, I countered respectfully. "I trained our last 4 regional managers. In fact, I personally trained you on our legacy database architecture when you joined 6 years ago." Bradley offered a faint smile that never reached his eyes. "We appreciate that history, Julian. But leadership is not merely knowing which digital switches to flip. It is about executive presence, optics, and driving cultural change. We need someone who can disrupt the status quo, not just maintain baseline stability." He paused for dramatic effect, letting the silence hover between us. "We are promoting Chloe Montgomery to the director position effective next Monday morning." The silence was heavy enough to crush concrete. Chloe Montgomery was 26 years old and had been in our department for just 14 months. I had spent the last 6 weeks secretly correcting her international manifest entries because she consistently mixed up volumetric weight with gross freight tonnage on cross-border shipments. "Chloe," I repeated, the name tasting like ash. "Bradley, Chloe deleted our master vendor dispatch registry twice last month. I had to manually restore the tables from a private local backup script I maintain." Bradley sighed softly with distinct corporate pity. "See, Julian, that is exactly what I am referring to here. You are trapped down in the weeds. Chloe operates up in the canopy. She possesses natural executive presence, and the board loved her presentation on synergistic supply chain optimization. You are exceptionally good at background maintenance." He stood up, signaling the end of the discussion. "You will report directly to Chloe starting next week. I expect you to support her transition fully. Teach her the nuts and bolts of daily routing so she can focus on strategic growth." I stood up slowly, feeling a cold stone of clarity settle in my chest, where 15 years of corporate loyalty used to live. "Of course," I said quietly. "I will provide her with the exact level of support required by my official employment contract description." "Excellent," Bradley beamed, mistaking my calm demeanor for submission. "That is the team player spirit we value, Julian, and try to smile a bit more in strategic planning sessions. It improves team morale." I walked out into the hum of the main floor. I returned to my cubicle, sat before my 3 monitors, and looked at the complex real-time grid that directed millions of dollars in daily inventory. Bradley wanted me to focus strictly on the nuts and bolts. He had no idea that I was the nuts and bolts, and he had just stripped the threads. By 8:45 the following Monday morning, the layout of the logistics floor had visibly shifted. Chloe Montgomery had moved into the corner glass office adjacent to Bradley's. She had replaced the dry erase whiteboards, which previously displayed critical emergency freight routes, with a framed canvas featuring a soaring hawk above the single word, disrupt. At 9 o'clock, I was summoned for our first alignment session. Chloe was leaning against her desk, sipping an iced latte. She was dressed in sharp designer attire, her eyes bright with the unearned confidence of someone who had never managed an operational crisis. "Julian, come on in," she chirped cheerfully. "Bradley mentioned you would get me up to speed on the technical back end. I want to audit this orientation quickly so we can focus our energy on grand strategy." "Strategy is important, Chloe," I said, taking a seat. "But first, we must review the morning server protocol. The primary database sync occurs precisely at 4 o'clock every morning. If the Shanghai Maritime node fails to execute a digital handshake with the Los Angeles port hub by 4:15, you must manually trigger an administrative port override code. Otherwise, we lose roughly 60 containers a day to automatic customs holds." I placed a thick leather-bound binder onto her desk. It contained 15 years of operational error codes, system workarounds, and direct phone numbers for the only 3 port supervisors in Long Beach who would answer a call at 3 in the morning. Chloe glanced at the binder as if I had deposited a piece of scrap metal on her desk. "Julian, wow," she laughed nervously. "This is a massive pile of paper. We are actively moving toward a paperless, agile ecosystem. Can you not just email me a short summary of bullet points?" "These are not bullet point topics, Chloe," I replied calmly. "Our legacy infrastructure is delicate. If a dispatcher enters a date format incorrectly on an international manifest, the mainframe rejects the entire shipment. That single mistake cost this firm $14,000 in contractual late fees per incident." She waved her hand dismissively, mimicking Bradley's gesture from the previous week. "We will modernize our software suite eventually. I am bringing in an external consultant next month to explore automated intelligence platforms. For right now, just handle those technical glitches on your end, okay? I need to finalize our regional budget pitch. I intend to demonstrate to Bradley that I can cut our operational overhead by 20% this quarter." I looked at her steadily. "You plan to cut operational expenses by 20%? The only reason our freight costs remain within budget is because I personally spend 2 hours every single evening manually rerouting our carrier trucks away from peak toll corridors. That process is not automated, Chloe. That is me working from home." She checked her smart watch. "Right, and we certainly appreciate your dedication. But my new directive is to delegate operational tasks. So you keep doing that routing routine. I am going to focus on high-level vendor relationships. I have a luncheon with our primary packaging suppliers in an hour." She stood up, signaling my dismissal. "Just keep the engines running, Julian. I am the captain of this ship now, but every vessel requires a dependable engineer down in the engine room." "Understood," I said. I picked up my binder. "Leave the manual here," she added. "I will have my assistant scan it into our cloud database whenever she finds time." I hesitated for a moment, then left the binder on her desk. It did not matter. She would never read it. She failed to comprehend that the engine room was not merely physical machinery. It was an intricate web of digital dependencies that I maintained through personal effort and a proprietary Python script running locally on my workstation. A script no one else in the firm even knew existed. Before leaving her office, I turned back. "One final detail, Chloe. The primary routing script requires a manual token refresh every Friday afternoon at 5 o'clock. If you do not refresh the security token, the operational application programming interface connection to our independent carrier fleet will sever automatically." She was already typing on her laptop. "Refresh the token." "Got it." "Thank you, Julian." She had not written down a single word. I walked back to my workstation beneath the buzzing fluorescent lights. I sat down and opened an automated notification from Human Resources. It contained my updated job description for Senior Systems Coordinator. I opened the file, determined to read every line of ink. That evening, I sat at my kitchen table with a mug of black coffee and a red pen. The apartment was quiet. My divorce had been finalized 5 years ago. a quiet casualty of the 60-hour work weeks I had poured into a corporation that had just deemed me unsuited for leadership. I carefully scanned my employment contract. Role: Senior Systems Coordinator. Primary duties: monitor daily shipping logs, generate weekly variance reports, coordinate with warehouse managers regarding physical inventory counts, update routine safety compliance documentation. I read the text 3 times. Nowhere did it state that I was required to maintain custom Python routing algorithms. Nowhere did it state that I was responsible for training regional directors. Nowhere did it state that I was obligated to respond to emergency port alerts at 2 in the morning. Nowhere did it state that I must optimize carrier routes from my home computer to save the firm 20% on fuel. I had performed those extra duties for over a decade out of personal pride, mistakenly believing that if I built a flawless system, I would eventually be granted the title to match. Instead, they had installed a figurehead over me and instructed me to polish the floorboards. It was 8:45 in the evening. Normally, I would now log into our corporate virtual private network from home, inspect orphan packages, and manually re-tag misrouted shipments. It took 45 minutes every night. If I skipped it, dozens of freight crates would sit idle in regional distribution hubs for weeks. My thumb hovered over the remote access application on my phone. Leadership, I whispered to the quiet room. They want high-level leadership. I thought of Bradley's arrogant smile. I thought of Chloe dismissing my operational binder. True leadership meant protecting resources, but they did not want stewardship. They wanted optics and strict hierarchy. I deleted the virtual private network application from my smartphone. Next, I opened my personal laptop. I accessed a folder named Oakley Route the War. Inside was a complex Python script I had authored 3 years prior on my personal computer. It scraped real-time traffic data, weather patterns, and driver rest logs to dynamically reconfigure freight routes. It ran locally on my workstation and fed optimized data into the corporate database. The company did not own the script. They did not even know it existed. They simply believed our commercial database was inherently intelligent. I opened the task scheduler that executed the script automatically every morning at 6 o'clock. I clicked Disable. A prompt appeared. Are you sure you want to disable this scheduled task? I took a slow sip of coffee. I am simply focusing on my assigned duties, I said aloud. I clicked yes. The task status shifted from active to disabled. I closed my laptop. For the first time in 15 years, I went to sleep knowing I would not be checking work servers until 8:30 the next morning. Malicious compliance is a quiet decay. Systems slowly rust from within until a key component snaps under routine pressure. I calculated it would take 3 weeks for our unmonitored logistics network to experience its first structural failure. I was mistaken. It took 4 days. The piece of our main operations floor shattered at 10:14 on Thursday morning. It began as a low murmur near dispatch cubicles and escalated into panic across the floor. Why is the primary dispatch status still pending? Someone shouted. Carrier drivers have been idling outside the distribution gate for 4 hours. I did not look up. I was filling out my weekly variance report, a spreadsheet requiring manual entry of fleet tire pressure logs. It was low-level clerical work assigned to staff management wished to keep quiet. I was entering 32 pounds per square inch for the 45th time when my desk phone rang. It was Chloe. Julian, come into my office immediately. Her voice was frantic. I locked my screen and walked into her glass office. Chloe was pacing behind her desk, clutching her head. On wall monitors, the freight map of the Midwest corridor was covered in flashing red warning icons. What is occurring with the system? She demanded. Everything associated with the Philadelphia Freight Hub has ground to a halt. Access codes are invalid. We have 48 trucks idling on the highway burning diesel. My custom script normally refreshed gate access codes every 6 hours. Without my script running, gate security codes expired at midnight, forcing the system into lockdown mode. It appears to be a security token synchronization failure, I observed calmly. Then fix it immediately, Chloe snapped. Perform whatever manual administrative override you usually do. I cannot do that, Chloe, I replied in a measured tone. She froze. What do you mean you cannot? I lack administrative clearance, I explained. When my job was finalized as Senior Systems Coordinator, my root credentials for the security mainframe were revoked. Bradley stated executive management wished to restrict root access strictly to director-level personnel. Manajashan had stripped my clearance to assert authority, completely unaware. I was the sole operator who knew how to navigate the mainframe. "That is absurd," Chloe exclaimed. "I will give you my administrative password right now." "I cannot accept executive credentials, Chloe," I said. "Sharing director credentials violates corporate security policy. If something goes wrong under your account, I could be terminated immediately for cause." Her eyes widened in horror. Every blinking red icon represented a delayed shipment. The primary client assigned to Philadelphia was Vanguard Microtech, our largest electronic account, with a penalty clause of $650 per hour per delayed shipment. "Then explain what steps I must take," she pleaded. "You must manually reset security gate tokens," I instructed. "Log into the root Unix terminal. Open the command line interface, navigate to security directory, execute reset command, and copy generated hexadecimal codes into 60 driver profiles command line interface." "Hexadecimal codes?" She blinked in confusion. I assumed there was a visual button to click. "There is no button," I said quietly. "There never was a button." She stared at me, waiting for me to sit in her chair and resolve the crisis, as I had done for 15 years. I glanced at the wall clock. 10:22 in the morning. Every passing minute drained thousands of dollars from the department budget. "I must return to my desk," I said politely. "My variance report is due at noon, and Bradley was clear. I must prioritize assigned clerical duties." I walked out. Behind me, she slammed her telephone receiver down, screaming for technology support. Support could not assist her. The ticket would route to an overseas call center, asking if she restarted her monitor. I sat down and entered 32 pounds per square inch into line 46. By Friday afternoon, the environment across the operational floor was toxic. The air conditioning ran at full capacity, yet the room felt hot with the nervous sweat of 20 stressed dispatchers. The Philadelphia blockage was cleared after 14 agonizing hours, only because Chloe forced a junior IT technician to execute a crude patch that diverted all Midwest freight traffic to a single secondary gate. The resulting bottleneck was catastrophic. Hannah Foster stopped beside my cubicle, looking exhausted. "Julian, the database shows no destination code for shipment. 8839. Do you know where this cargo belongs? Did you submit an IT support ticket for a database query?" I asked gently. "No, I need to clear this truck right now," she admitted. "I am not permitted to modify live database entries without an authorized ticket tracking number, Hannah," I said. Chloe was very explicit about audit compliance in her memo. Hannah looked at me, understanding dawning in her eyes. "You always used to fix these errors in seconds," she said softly. "I know," I replied. "And look where 15 years of doing that got me." The collapse of corporate efficiency is a cumulative process. By the end of the second week, my inbox overflowed with panicked messages from regional hub managers regarding optimization failures and system error 404. I moved every single message directly into a folder labeled Outside Scope of Employment Contract. On Friday evening at 5:30, I met with Gavin Thorne at a quiet booth in the back of the Rusty Anchored Diner. Gavin was a former senior systems architect who had been terminated by Bradley 3 years ago for refusing to install invasive tracking software. Today, Gavin operated an independent forensic systems and legal advisory firm. "I thoroughly reviewed your employment agreement, Julian," Gavin said, setting his coffee mug aside. "Standard corporate boilerplates claim ownership over creations developed during work hours, using company equipment for assigned duties. However, you authored the entire Oakley Route core source code at home on your personal computer, correct?" Every single line, I confirmed. "On my personal laptop during evenings and weekends. It executed locally from my individual user profile. And your job description lists clerical data entry and inventory tracking," Gavin noted. "Software development is nowhere to be found. Legally, Transatlantic Freight Logistics does not own your routing algorithm. They ran their Midwest network on unlicensed software for 3 full years. Software you generously allowed them to execute pro bono." Gavin pulled a formal legal document from his briefcase. It was an official copyright notice, under Title 35 of the United States Code, Section 271, regarding proprietary software rights. I prepared a retroactive licensing invoice for $320,000, covering unauthorized corporate execution over the past 36 months, Gavin explained. Moving forward, we present a service-level agreement featuring a monthly retainer fee of $32,000 for external maintenance. Bradley will claim it as corporate extortion, I remarked. Let him claim whatever he wishes, Gavin said quietly. On Monday morning, you will formally deliver written notification revoking access due to non-payment of proprietary licensing. If they want operational efficiency back, they must purchase it from your independent entity. I disabled the scheduled task days ago, I noted. Good. On Monday, scrub local files entirely. Gavin leaned forward. They disrespected your decade of dedication, Julian. They took your genius, handed a director title to an unqualified novice, and ordered you to do data entry. This is asserting the legal value of your intellectual property. I picked up the pen and signed the legal representation agreement. When operational system failure occurs, management will attempt to accuse you of sabotage, Gavin added. I have already archived public logistics metrics and client complaints, constructing an undeniable timeline proving failure began when management altered oversight and stripped your privileges. If they sue, we countersue for corporate defamation. We clinked coffee mugs together. To the nuts and bolts, I said. The mid-month operational review was historically a victory parade for Bradley. This time, performance arrows on the projector screen were deep red. Wednesday morning, 3 weeks after I disabled my local script, the conference room was packed with regional executives. Chloe sat beside Bradley, looking visibly exhausted. Bradley stood up, adjusting his silk tie. Our department encountered unexpected operational headwinds this past month. Fuel market volatility and port congestion severely impacted throughput metrics. Fuel market volatility was a falsehood. Fuel prices had stabilized. West Coast port congestion was equally false. The genuine cause of decline sat deactivated on my personal laptop. Without my custom algorithm balancing freight distribution, carrier trucks drove empty half the time. Overall department production is currently down 35%, Bradley admitted. But we are confident this represents temporary transitional friction, a regional hub manager named Henderson interrupted sternly. Bradley, strategic promise, does not pay commercial drivers. My freight teams are idling in Cleveland for 6 hours awaiting manual routing numbers. We have not seen drops like this in 15 years. What specifically changed in the back end? Bradley stiffened defensively. We are modernizing our digital infrastructure. Henderson. These are routine growing pains. Julian, Henderson turned directly to me. You spent 15 years managing these routing nodes. Why are automated routing tables failing to synchronize? I am afraid that inquiry lies entirely outside my current operational scope, Mr. Henderson, I replied smoothly. As Senior Systems Coordinator, my duties are strictly limited to clerical variance reports. Operational routing strategy falls exclusively under Director Montgomery's executive purview. Chloe flushed bright red. We are auditing synchronization protocols, she stammered. It is a vendor integration issue. A vendor issue? Henderson scoffed. We own the commercial carrier fleet. We will have the system stabilized by the fourth quarter, Bradley interjected hastily. Let us proceed to the quarterly budget review. When the meeting adjourned, Bradley cornered me near the exit. You are thoroughly enjoying this chaos, he hissed. You are intentionally withholding technical support. I am strictly adhering to the official job description you finalized for me, Bradley, I replied. I am prioritizing assigned clerical duties unless you formally reclassify my role and authorize executive compensation for systems engineering. Bradley stared at me bitterly. Just return to your cubicle, he muttered. The collapse of corporate authority manifests in the silent abandonment of official protocols. By 4 o'clock on Friday afternoon, our operations floor was paralyzed. The weekend dispatch window was closing. Chloe was shouting at a dispatcher over a telephone handset. He cannot legally drive, Chloe, a junior planner explained. He reached his maximum driving hours. If he operates that vehicle, he loses his commercial license and the firm faces federal prosecution. Then override the manual log, Chloe yelled. Reassign the haul under a secondary driver code. That is federal freight fraud, Chloe, the dispatcher whispered, horrified. Chloe slammed the handset onto the floor. She spun around and locked eyes with me. You, she marched over, pointing at my face. You altered system parameters. You broke the dispatch algorithm. I have not accessed system parameters in 3 weeks, Chloe, I replied calmly. I lack administrative access. The optimization algorithm is gone, she cried out. The database is displaying raw, unsorted freight data. Are you referring to the custom routine I used to execute manually? I asked smoothly. The tool I offered to teach you, which you declined to focus on high-level strategy? Fix it right now, she hissed. I am ordering you to fix it. I cannot repair what is not broken, I replied. The corporate software purchased by this firm operates as designed. It simply lacks the personal optimization tools I personally maintained and removed when restricted to clerical duties. You removed the code? She gasped. I am telling Bradley you stole corporate assets. Go ahead, Chloe, I said quietly. But if you report that our logistics network collapsed because a coordinator stopped running a private script from his personal laptops, what does that communicate regarding your leadership? She opened her mouth, but no sound emerged. She was utterly trapped. If she admitted I was essential, she confessed her own incompetence. I despise you, she whispered. I understand, I replied. But hostility does not move freight. The final stroke arrived on the second Tuesday of the following month. The parking lot was devoid of carrier trucks. At 10 o'clock, an emergency assembly was called. Vanguard Microtech had canceled their contract, which represented 65% of outbound volume, and transferred their account to Horizon Express. CEO Grant Caldwell announced that throughput dropped 75% in 60 days, creating severe financial losses. Following the speech, Bradley summoned me. Fix the routing network, Bradley croaked. Restore throughput by Friday. I cannot perform that task, Bradley, I replied. I no longer possess the software. The optimization layer was custom software I personally authored, and I have revoked execution rights. That is sabotage, Bradley gasped. I will file criminal charges. You will not, Bradley, I said, handing him a legal notice from Gavin Thorne, under Title 35 of the United States Code, Section 271. You executed my software without a license for 3 years. I am demanding fair compensation. At 1 o'clock, CEO Grant Caldwell summoned me and Gavin Thorne to the executive boardroom. We do not require outside attorneys, Bradley interjected nervously. Julian, reactivate the parameters. Your corporate software is functioning as designed, I stated across the boardroom table. It simply lacks my proprietary intelligence layer. Grant Caldwell asked if stability could be achieved immediately. I can restore full stability in 10 minutes, I replied. Gavin Thorne presented 3 legal binders containing copyright proof, code creation timestamps predating my duties, and an invoice for $320,000 in retroactive licensing, plus a $32,000 monthly retainer. Chief Legal Counsel Ms. Holloway reviewed the documentation and confirmed to Caldwell that the work-for-hire doctrine did not apply, leaving the firm with 0 legal ownership claim over the asset. CEO Grant Caldwell terminated Vice President Bradley Prescott on the spot for gross incompetence and signed our licensing contract. 10 minutes later, I logged into the central server facility and deployed my optimization script across all Midwest nodes. On the floor displays, red warning lights flipped to steady green, automated queues cleared, and dispatchers cheered. 2 weeks later, Bradley was gone. Chloe was reassigned to a satellite facility, and an experienced external engineer named Nolan Ramsey took over operations. I was sitting on my private patio at 10 o'clock on a Tuesday morning, sipping coffee while watching the real-time logistics dashboard run flawlessly. Every month, my business account receives a $32,000 wire transfer. I effectively retired at 54 years of age, working 5 hours a week while holding total ownership over my time. For 15 years, I mistakenly believed corporate loyalty was currency. The fundamental error was surrendering hard-earned value without clear contractual boundaries. If you are the indispensable professional who keeps complex operations running, document your worth, know your contract, and protect your intellectual property. I had no desire to destroy the firm. I simply demanded they pay for the light I provided, and when they refused, I flipped the switch.